In a quiet, sun-drenched town in Georgia, there lived a young man named Marcus Johnson. From the moment he could walk, Marcus was drawn to the skies. Every day after school, he would run to the edge of the local airport, where tall grass swayed gently in the breeze, and lie on his back, staring up at the endless blue expanse above him. Planes roared overhead, their engines humming like music to his ears. To Marcus, those machines weren't just hunks of metal. They were freedom, adventure, and possibility all rolled into one. Growing up as a black boy in a small southern town wasn't easy. Opportunities were scarce, and expectations were often low. Many people around him seemed content with the lives they had been handed, but Marcus dreamed bigger. He wanted more than what his surroundings offered. His father worked long hours at a factory, and his mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. Despite their struggles, they encouraged Marcus to chase his dreams. If you want something bad enough, his dad used to say, you've got to fight for it. That fighting spirit became the core of who Marcus was. By the time he reached high school, he knew exactly what he wanted: to become a fighter pilot. It wasn't just about flying planes. It was about proving that he could rise above the limitations others tried to place on him. He poured himself into his studies, excelling in math and physics, subjects that fascinated him because they explained how things flew. At night, when the house was quiet, Marcus would sit by the dim light of a desk lamp, reading books about aviation history and memorizing facts about different aircraft. He even built model planes from scraps of wood and old parts he found in junkyards, teaching himself the basics of aerodynamics. But Marcus didn't stop there. Knowing that physical fitness was crucial for pilots, he started waking up before sunrise to jog around the neighborhood. The streets were empty except for the occasional car passing by, its headlights cutting through the misty morning air. Sometimes kids playing basketball nearby would tease him, calling out, "Hey Marcus, why you running so early? You training for the Olympics?" Marcus would laugh and keep going, his sneakers pounding rhythmically against the pavement. Inside, though, he felt a spark of pride. They didn't understand yet, but someday they would see what he was capable of. As graduation approached, Marcus set his sights on a prestigious aviation training program located near an active military air base. The camp promised to turn promising candidates into skilled pilots, preparing them for careers in both civilian and military aviation. Competition was fierce, and acceptance rates were notoriously low. But Marcus refused to let fear hold him back. With the support of his parents, he filled out the application forms meticulously, triple-checking every answer. When the letter finally arrived, his heart raced as he tore open the envelope. Inside was the news he'd been praying for. He'd been accepted. The day Marcus reported to the camp, he felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The airbase sprawled across acres of land, its runways stretching toward the horizon like ribbons of asphalt. Towering hangars housed sleek jets, their polished surfaces gleaming under the bright Georgia sun. Everywhere he looked, cadets bustled about, some lugging equipment, others deep in conversation. For a brief moment, Marcus allowed himself to imagine what it might feel like to climb into the cockpit of one of those magnificent machines. However, reality quickly set in. From the very beginning, Marcus sensed that not everyone welcomed him with open arms. Some instructors barely acknowledged him during introductions, while others exchanged knowing glances whenever his name came up. During orientation, one senior trainer openly questioned whether Marcus truly belonged there, implying that perhaps the selection committee had made a mistake. Though Marcus tried to brush off the comment, it stung deeply. He reminded himself why he was here: to prove that he deserved this chance as much as anyone else. Training began soon after, and it was every bit as challenging as Marcus had anticipated. Days started before dawn, with grueling physical exercises designed to test endurance and strength. Push-ups, sprints, obstacle courses, all of it pushed Marcus to his limits. Yet he thrived in these conditions. While other recruits groaned and complained, Marcus gritted his teeth and powered through, determined to show that he wouldn't quit. In the classroom, he soaked up knowledge like a sponge, devouring lessons on navigation, meteorology, and aircraft systems. His instructors couldn't deny his intelligence or work ethic, though a few still seemed reluctant to give him credit. Outside of training, Marcus struggled to fit in socially. Most of the other cadets came from backgrounds vastly different from his own. Their conversations revolved around private schools, summer vacations abroad, and family connections in the military. Marcus listened quietly, feeling like an outsider in a world he didn't fully understand. Still, he refused to let loneliness derail him. Instead, he sought solace in the friendships he did manage to form. A handful of recruits admired his resilience and shared his passion for aviation. Together, they studied late into the night, quizzed each other on flight procedures, and practiced maneuvers until they got them right. Despite his best efforts, Marcus couldn't escape the subtle and sometimes not so subtle biases stacked against him. One instructor assigned him extra drills that weren't required of the others, claiming it was necessary for improvement. Another openly criticized his performance during simulations, saying things like, "Maybe this isn't the career for you, bar you." Each remark chipped away at Marcus's confidence but also fueled his determination to succeed. He reminded himself daily that failure wasn't an option, not for him, not for his family, and certainly not for the dream he'd carried since childhood. One evening, as Marcus sat alone in his bunk reviewing notes, he overheard two cadets talking nearby. "I don't know why they let him in," one said dismissively. "He doesn't have what it takes." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was he good enough? Could he really overcome the obstacles in his path? Shaking his head, Marcus forced himself to focus. He thought about his parents sacrificing everything to give him a better life. He thought about the little boy who once lay in the grass dreaming of the sky. And he thought about the future he was working so hard to build. Marcus realized then that this journey wasn't just about becoming a pilot. It was about proving to himself and to the world that he was unstoppable. No matter how many times he fell, he would get back up. No matter how many doors were slammed in his face, he would find another way forward. This was his story, and he intended to write it on his own terms. By the end of the first phase of training, Marcus had earned the respect of many of his peers, even if some instructors remained skeptical. His grades were among the highest in the class, and his physical fitness scores consistently ranked near the top. Yet Marcus knew the hardest battles were still ahead. The road to becoming a pilot was paved with challenges, and he understood that perseverance would be his greatest weapon. As he lay in bed that night listening to the distant hum of jet engines, Marcus smiled faintly. Tomorrow was a new day, and he was ready to face whatever it brought. As the weeks passed, Marcus continued to push himself harder than ever before. Each day at the aviation camp brought new challenges, but also opportunities to prove his worth. The physical training intensified, with longer runs, heavier weights, and more complex obstacle courses. While some cadets began to falter under the pressure, Marcus only grew stronger. His body ached constantly, but he welcomed the pain as proof that he was improving. Every bead of sweat, every strained muscle, reminded him of how far he had come and how much farther he still wanted to go. In the classroom, Marcus excelled. He devoured every piece of information presented to him, from the intricacies of flight dynamics to the principles of navigation. When others struggled to grasp concepts like lift and drag, Marcus patiently explained them in simple terms, earning gratitude from his classmates. His ability to break down complicated ideas made him popular among his peers, though it didn't win over all the instructors. Some remained openly hostile, finding fault in even his smallest mistakes. One instructor, Lieutenant Harris, seemed particularly determined to make Marcus's life difficult. Lieutenant Harris was a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. From the moment Marcus arrived at the camp, Harris had singled him out, assigning him extra tasks and scrutinizing his work more closely than anyone else's. During one simulation exercise, Harris accused Marcus of failing to follow proper protocol, despite clear evidence that Marcus had executed the maneuver correctly. You need to step up your game if you want to stay here, Harris barked after the session, his voice dripping with disdain. Marcus clenched his fists but held his tongue. He knew arguing would only make things worse. Despite the unfair treatment, Marcus refused to let Harris get the better of him. Instead, he channeled his frustration into action. Whenever Harris gave him additional assignments, Marcus completed them flawlessly. If Harris criticized his technique, Marcus practiced until he perfected it. Slowly but surely, Marcus began to earn grudging respect from some of the other instructors, who couldn't ignore his relentless drive and natural talent for flying. Outside of training, Marcus found solace in the friendships he had formed with a few fellow recruits. Among them was Sarah Chen, a quiet yet fiercely intelligent young woman whose family owned a chain of restaurants in California. Despite her privileged background, Sarah treated Marcus with kindness and respect, never judging him based on where he came from. Then there was Jake Thompson, a former college football player with a booming laugh and a heart of gold. Together, the trio became inseparable, supporting each other through the highs and lows of camp life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the airfield, Marcus, Sarah, and Jake gathered near the hangar for their nightly study session. They spread out their notes on the hood of an old pickup truck, quizzing each other on emergency procedures and aircraft specifications. As they worked, Jake leaned back against the truck and sighed. "I don't know how you do it, Marcus," he said, shaking his head. "Harris is riding you harder than anyone else, and you just keep getting better." Marcus shrugged, trying to play it cool. "What choice do I have? I'm not going to let him win." Sarah frowned, her dark eyes narrowing. "It's not fair, though. You're working twice as hard as everyone else, and they still treat you like you don't belong here." Marcus hesitated, unsure how to respond. He appreciated their support, but he didn't want to dwell on the negativity. "Look," he said, finally, "all I can control is what I do, and I'm going to keep doing my best. That's all that matters." His words silenced the group for a moment, but Jake broke the tension with a grin. "Well, your best is pretty damn good. If I were Harris, I'd be scared of you by now." They laughed, the sound echoing softly in the cool night air. For a brief moment, Marcus forgot about the weight of expectations and the constant scrutiny. Surrounded by friends who believed in him, he felt a flicker of hope, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this fight. But hope alone couldn't shield Marcus from the harsh realities of the camp. Just when he thought he was gaining ground, disaster struck. It happened during a routine evaluation flight, a critical test designed to assess each cadet's readiness for advanced training. Marcus had prepared meticulously for this moment, studying the flight plan until he could recite it in his sleep. As he climbed into the cockpit of the training jet, his hands steady on the controls, he told himself to stay calm. This was his chance to shine. The first part of the flight went smoothly. Marcus executed every maneuver with precision, his movements fluid and confident. But as he approached the final phase of the exercise, something unexpected occurred. According to the onboard systems, Marcus had briefly veered off course, violating a key safety guideline. Alarms blared in the cockpit, startling him. Quickly regaining composure, Marcus corrected his trajectory and completed the rest of the flight without incident. Still, the damage was done. Back on the ground, Lieutenant Harris wasted no time confronting Marcus. "Do you realize what you just did?" Harris demanded, his face red with anger. "You put yourself and everyone else in danger." Marcus blinked, stunned. "Sir, Don't try to explain yourself," Harris interrupted, cutting him. "Offie, the data doesn't lie. You made a critical error, and that's unacceptable." "But sir," Marcus protested, his voice rising slightly, "I swear I didn't veer off course. Something must have gone wrong with the system." Harris scoffed, dismissing Marcus's explanation with a wave of his hand. "Save it. We have rules for a reason, and you broke them. Consider this strike one." The accusation hit Marcus like a ton of bricks. He knew he hadn't made the mistake Harris claimed he had, but arguing wouldn't change anything. Feeling defeated, Marcus returned to his quarters, replaying the flight over and over in his mind. What had gone wrong? Was it possible the system malfunctioned? Or had someone tampered with it intentionally? The questions swirled in his head, keeping him awake long into the night. Over the next few days, Marcus tried to move past the incident, focusing instead on upcoming evaluations. But Harris wasn't finished with him. During another simulation, Marcus was accused of misjudging altitude during a landing approach. Once again, the evidence pointed to equipment failure rather than pilot error, but Harris refused to listen. "This is strike two," he announced coldly, his tone leaving no room for debate. By the time the third accusation came, a minor infraction involving communication protocols, Marcus knew what was coming. Summoned to Harris's office, he braced himself for the worst. Sitting behind his desk, Harris fixed Marcus with a steely gaze. "3 strikes, Johnson," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "That's all we allow around here. Pack your things. You're done." For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. The words echoed in his ears, hollow and final. All his hard work, all his sacrifices reduced to nothing. He opened his mouth to argue, to plead his case, but stopped himself. What was the point? Harris had already made up his mind. Walking back to his bunk, Marcus felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him: anger, sadness, disbelief. He packed his belongings mechanically, folding uniforms and stacking books with trembling hands. Around him, the bustle of camp life continued as if nothing had changed. Cadets joked and laughed, oblivious to the turmoil raging within Marcus. Only Sarah and Jake noticed his absence during dinner. When they found him packing, their faces fell. "Marcus, what happened?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with panic. "They kicked me out," Marcus replied flatly, avoiding their eyes. "Harris said I wasn't cut out for this." "That's ridiculous," Jake exclaimed, slamming his fist against the wall. "You're one of the best pilots here." Marcus forced a weak smile. "Tell that to Harris." Sarah placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Don't give up, Marcus. This isn't the end. There's got to be another way." Her words offered a glimmer of hope, but Marcus couldn't see it yet. As he loaded his bags into the back of a taxi later that evening, he glanced one last time at the airbase. The runways stretched endlessly into the distance, lined with rows of gleaming jets. Somewhere deep inside, Marcus vowed to return, not as a rejected cadet, but as a pilot who had earned his place in the sky. The ride home was silent, the weight of failure pressing heavily on Marcus's chest. When he walked through the door of his house, his parents greeted him with warm hugs and concerned expressions. They listened quietly as he recounted the events of the past few weeks, their hearts breaking for their son. Yet, even in their disappointment, they reminded him of the strength that had carried him this far. "You've faced tougher battles than this," his father said firmly, "and you've always come out on top. Don't let this stop you." His mother nodded in agreement. "We believe in you, Marcus. Whatever you decide to do next, we'll stand by you." Their unwavering support reignited a spark within Marcus. He realized that while the camp may have closed its doors to him, his dream of becoming a pilot was still alive. Determined to rise above the setback, Marcus resolved to find another path forward. Little did he know, the journey ahead would lead him to places he never imagined, and ultimately bring him closer to the skies he loved so dearly. Returning home felt like stepping back into a world that had moved on without him. The air was thick with the scent of pine trees and fresh-cut grass, familiar, yet tinged with sadness. Marcus spent his first few days lying low, avoiding questions from neighbors and friends who wondered why he'd come back so soon. His parents tried their best to lift his spirits, cooking his favorite meals and encouraging him to take walks outside. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of failure. Every time he passed the local airport where he used to dream of flying, guilt gnawed at him. He had let himself down, and worse, he feared he might have let his family down too. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus sat on the porch staring blankly at the field stretching out before him. His father joined him, pulling up a chair and lighting a cigarette. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, his dad broke the silence. "You know, son, life has a funny way of testing us. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is against you. But those tests? They're not there to break you. They're there to make you stronger. Marcus nodded absently, unsure if he believed it. I just don't know what to do next, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. His father leaned forward, his expression serious. Then start by figuring out who can help you. You've always been good at asking for advice when you need it. Don't stop now. Those words stuck with Marcus. The next morning, he decided to reach out to anyone who might offer guidance or support. He began by contacting retired pilots and veterans in his community, sharing his story and seeking their input. Most were sympathetic but offered little more than encouragement. However, one name kept coming up repeatedly: Captain Daniels, a former Air Force officer known for mentoring young aviators. With nothing to lose, Marcus drove to Captain Daniels's modest home on the outskirts of town. The older man greeted him warmly, inviting him inside for coffee. Over steaming mugs, Marcus poured out his heart, recounting everything that had happened at the camp. To his surprise, Daniels listened intently, nodding occasionally, but never interrupting. When Marcus finished, Daniels leaned back in his chair, stroking his salt and pepper beard thoughtfully. You've got grit, kid, Daniels said finally. That's something no one can teach you. And grit will take you farther than any fancy degree or recommendation letter ever could. Encouraged by Daniels' words, Marcus asked for advice on how to continue pursuing his dream. Daniels smiled knowingly. There's someone I think you should meet. A friend of mine owns a private airstrip about an hour from here. He owes me a favor. Maybe he'll let you use it to practice. The idea lit a fire in Marcus. Though it wasn't the same as being part of an official program, having access to an airstrip would be a lifeline. With Daniel's help, Marcus arranged to visit the airstrip the following weekend. When he arrived, he was greeted by Mr. Peterson, a wiry man with kind eyes and a handshake that felt like iron. After hearing Marcus's story, Peterson agreed to let him use the facility under Daniel's supervision. Thus began a new chapter in Marcus's journey. Every Saturday morning, he woke before dawn and drove to the airstrip, eager to put in hours of practice. At first, he flew smaller planes, Cessnas and Pipers, that were far less advanced than the jets he'd trained on at the camp. But Marcus didn't care. Flying was flying, and each session brought him closer to regaining his confidence. Daniels became his unofficial instructor, teaching him techniques and strategies he hadn't learned in the formal program. Under Daniels' watchful eye, Marcus honed his skills, mastering landings, takeoffs, and emergency maneuvers. Word of Marcus's determination spread quickly through the small town. Neighbors who once doubted whether he could succeed started rooting for him. One day, a local news reporter named Lisa Thompson approached Marcus after spotting him at the airstrip. Intrigued by his story, she asked if she could feature him in a segment highlighting individuals overcoming adversity. Initially hesitant, Marcus agreed, hoping it might inspire others facing similar struggles. The segment aired during the evening news, and the response was overwhelming. Viewers flooded the station with messages of support, many sharing their own stories of perseverance. Some even sent donations to help fund Marcus's continued training. Local businesses pitched in too, offering discounts on flight lessons and equipment rentals. Suddenly, Marcus found himself surrounded by a community determined to see him succeed. With newfound resources, Marcus enrolled in advanced flight courses at a nearby aviation school. Here, he encountered instructors who recognized his potential and pushed him to excel. He studied tirelessly, devouring textbooks and spending countless hours in simulators. Each lesson built upon the last, sharpening his instincts and deepening his understanding of aviation. By the end of the year, Marcus had earned multiple certifications, including a commercial pilot license, a feat that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. But Marcus wasn't content to stop there. Inspired by his progress, he set his sights on mastering military-grade aircraft. Through Daniels's connections, he gained access to cutting-edge simulators designed to replicate the experience of flying fighter jets. These machines were vastly different from anything Marcus had worked with before, requiring precision and split-second decision-making. Yet he embraced the challenge, logging hundreds of virtual flight hours until he could navigate even the most complex scenarios with ease. As his skills improved, Marcus began to envision a future where he might re-enter the world of military aviation. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Programs like the one he'd been dismissed from were notoriously difficult to get into, but he refused to give up. Instead, he focused on proving himself worthy of another chance. One afternoon, while practicing on the simulator, Marcus received a call from Daniels. The older man sounded unusually excited. "Listen carefully, kid," Daniel said. "There's a big demonstration event happening at the same camp that kicked you out. Top brass from the Air Force will be there, including recruiters for elite squadrons. If you want to make a statement, this is your shot." Marcus hesitated. Returning to the place where he'd faced such rejection felt daunting. Memories of Lieutenant Harris's cold stares and harsh words lingered in his mind. Still, something inside him stirred, a mix of defiance and hope. "What do you suggest?" he asked cautiously. Daniels chuckled. "I've already made arrangements. A buddy of mine owes me another favor. He's lending us an F-22 Raptor for the day. All you need to do is show them what you're made of." The idea was audacious, almost reckless. Flying an F-22, a state-of-the-art stealth fighter jet, was no small feat, especially given Marcus's limited experience with such advanced aircraft. But Marcus trusted Daniels implicitly. If anyone could guide him through this, it was the seasoned captain. Over the next week, Marcus threw himself into preparing for the event. He studied every detail of the F-22 systems, memorizing its capabilities and limitations. Daniels drilled him relentlessly, simulating high-pressure situations to ensure Marcus could handle anything that came his way. As the day of the demonstration approached, Marcus felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. This was his moment, to rewrite the narrative, to prove once and for all that he belonged among the best. On the morning of the event, Marcus stood beside the sleek F-22, its matte black surface gleaming faintly in the early light. The airbase buzzed with activity, cadets and spectators gathering to watch the showcase. Marcus took a deep breath, reminding himself why he was here. This wasn't just about revenge or vindication. It was about showing the world that setbacks don't define you. What defines you is how you rise after falling. As he climbed into the cockpit, strapping himself in and running final checks, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. No matter what happened next, he had already won. He had refused to give up, refused to let others dictate his fate. And now, with the roar of engines filling the air, he was ready to soar higher than ever before. The day of the demonstration arrived, and the airbase was alive with energy. Rows of tents lined the edges of the runway, displaying cutting-edge aviation technology and military equipment. Uniformed personnel bustled about, while spectators, some in suits, others in casual attire, gathered to watch the spectacle. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as pilots prepared their aircraft for takeoff. Among them stood Marcus Johnson, clad in a borrowed flight suit that fit him perfectly, his heart pounding like a drum. He glanced around at the crowd, taking in the faces of cadets, instructors, and high-ranking officials. Somewhere in the distance, he spotted Lieutenant Harris, the man who had dismissed him from the camp months earlier. Harris's presence sent a shiver down Marcus's spine, but it also fueled his determination. Today wasn't just about flying. It was about proving something, to himself, to Harris, and to everyone else who had doubted him. As Marcus climbed into the cockpit of the F-22 Raptor, he felt a surge of adrenaline. The jet was a masterpiece of engineering, sleek and powerful, designed to dominate the skies. Every button, lever, and dial seemed to hum with potential. Daniels had spent hours teaching Marcus how to handle the aircraft, drilling him on its systems until he could navigate them in his sleep. Still, nothing could fully prepare him for the reality of sitting inside such a machine, knowing that all eyes would soon be on him. Before taxiing onto the runway, Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought about the long journey that had brought him here, the sacrifices, the setbacks, the moments when giving up had seemed like the easiest choice. But he hadn't given up. Instead, he had fought harder, worked longer, and refused to let anyone tell him he couldn't achieve his dreams. Now it was time to show the world what he was capable of. The demonstration began with a series of performances by seasoned pilots, each showcasing their skills in breathtaking displays of precision and agility. One pilot executed a flawless barrel roll, drawing cheers from the audience. Another performed a high-speed pass so low that it rattled the ground beneath their feet. As impressive as these maneuvers were, they only heightened the pressure on Marcus. When his turn came, he knew he couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Finally, the announcer called out his name. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marcus Johnson, a young aviator whose journey has inspired many. Watch closely as he demonstrates the capabilities of the F-22 Raptor." A hush fell over the crowd as Marcus guided the jet onto the runway. His hands gripped the controls firmly, his focus razor-sharp. With a roar that shook the earth, the F-22 accelerated down the tarmac, lifting off the ground with effortless grace. As Marcus soared into the sky, he felt an overwhelming sense of freedom, a feeling he hadn't experienced since childhood, lying in the grass and dreaming of this very moment. High above the airbase, Marcus began his routine. First came a series of tight loops, the jet slicing through the air like a knife. Then he executed a perfect Immelman turn, flipping the aircraft upside down before leveling off smoothly. Each maneuver drew gasps of admiration from the spectators below. Even the most skeptical observers found themselves captivated by the sheer skill and confidence Marcus displayed. But Marcus wasn't done yet. For his grand finale, he planned a daring low-altitude pass, an intricate move that required pinpoint accuracy. As he descended toward the airfield, he scanned the area carefully, ensuring the landing zone was clear. To his surprise, he noticed something unusual. The designated landing strip was occupied by a group of cadets conducting a training exercise. They stood clustered together, oblivious to the approaching jet. Thinking quickly, Marcus adjusted his approach. Rather than aborting the maneuver or risking injury to the cadets, he aimed for the adjacent field used for drills. It was narrower than the main runway, with uneven terrain that posed additional challenges. Yet Marcus trusted his instincts and his training. Lowering the F-22 gently, he aligned the jet with the makeshift landing strip and eased back on the throttle. The wheels touched down with a soft thud, sending up a cloud of dust as the plane skidded to a stop mere feet from the astonished cadets. For a moment, there was silence. Then the crowd erupted into applause, the sound echoing across the airbase like thunder. Spectators jumped to their feet, cheering wildly as Marcus powered down the engine and stepped out of the cockpit. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail of his triumphant exit. Cadets rushed forward, patting him on the back and congratulating him on an incredible performance. Even Lieutenant Harris looked stunned, his jaw clenched tightly as if struggling to process what he had just witnessed. Among the spectators was General Thompson, head of recruitment for the Air Force's top squadrons. A tall, imposing figure. With silver hair and piercing blue eyes, the general approached Marcus with an approving nod. "Young man," he said, extending his hand, "I don't care what happened at that camp. What I saw today tells me everything I need to know about your abilities." Marcus shook the general's hand, his mind racing. Could this really be happening? Was the dream he'd clung to for so long finally within reach? Over the next few days, Marcus learned that his performance had indeed caught the attention of the right people. Within a week, he received an official invitation to join an elite fighter squadron, fulfilling the ambition he had nurtured since childhood. The letter arrived in a plain envelope, but its contents carried weight far beyond its simple appearance. Holding it in his hands, Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes, not of sadness but of joy and relief. News of Marcus's achievement spread quickly, inspiring not only those who had supported him but also countless strangers who heard his story. Local newspapers ran features celebrating his resilience, while social media lit up with messages of congratulations. Friends and family threw a party in his honor, filling the house with laughter and love. For the first time in a long while, Marcus allowed himself to relax, basking in the warmth of validation and acceptance. Yet despite the accolades, Marcus remained grounded. He understood that success wasn't the end of the road. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter. Joining the squadron meant stepping into a world of even greater challenges and responsibilities. But Marcus welcomed the opportunity, knowing he had proven himself capable of rising to any occasion. In the weeks leading up to his induction, Marcus trained harder than ever, determined to enter the squadron fully prepared. Daniels continued to mentor him, offering tips and encouragement as Marcus pushed himself to new heights. Together, they reviewed footage of his demonstration flight, analyzing areas where he could improve. Though Marcus had already achieved remarkable feats, he recognized that mastery was a lifelong pursuit. On the day Marcus officially joined the squadron, he stood alongside fellow recruits, their uniforms crisp and their expressions resolute. As the flag fluttered proudly in the breeze, Marcus reflected on how far he had come. From the boy who once dreamed of airplanes to the man standing ready to defend his country, his journey had been anything but easy. Yet, it was precisely those hardships that had shaped him into the person he was today. Looking out at the horizon, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The sky stretched endlessly before him, vast and limitless. Somewhere in the distance, an F-22 roared to life, its engines humming with promise. Marcus smiled to himself, knowing that his story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And as he walked toward the hangar, ready to climb into the cockpit once more, he carried with him the unshakable belief that no obstacle was too great to overcome, not when you had the courage to keep reaching for the stars. Years passed, and Marcus Johnson's name became synonymous with excellence in the world of aviation. From the moment he joined the elite fighter squadron, he dedicated himself to mastering every aspect of his role. His fellow pilots respected him not only for his skill, but also for his humility and unwavering work ethic. While others might have rested on their laurels after such a dramatic rise to success, Marcus remained focused, constantly striving to improve. He knew that being a pilot wasn't just about flying. It was about responsibility, leadership, and serving something greater than oneself. Marcus quickly earned a reputation as one of the most reliable members of the squadron. Whether it was leading high-stakes missions or mentoring rookie pilots, he approached each task with the same level of commitment and precision. During training exercises, he pushed his teammates to excel, sharing techniques and strategies he had learned through years of hard work. "You can always be better," he often told them. "Never settle for good enough." But Marcus didn't limit his influence to the skies. On the ground, he became an advocate for diversity and inclusion within the military. He remembered all too well the skepticism and bias he had faced early in his career, and he was determined to ensure that no one else would endure the same struggles. Through speeches, workshops, and informal conversations, Marcus encouraged young recruits, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, to pursue their dreams without fear. "The sky belongs to everyone," he would say. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His efforts did not go unnoticed. Senior officers began inviting him to speak at conferences and events, where his story inspired audiences across the country. One memorable evening, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at a national aviation summit. As he recounted his journey, from the small town in Georgia to the cockpit of an F-22, the room fell silent, captivated by his words. When he finished, the crowd erupted into applause, many rising to their feet in admiration. That night, Marcus realized that his impact extended far beyond the airbase. He had become a symbol of resilience, proof that determination could overcome even the toughest obstacles. Despite his growing fame, Marcus never lost sight of his roots. Whenever he returned home, he made it a point to visit the airstrip where he had practiced during his darkest days. Mr. Peterson, the owner, still greeted him warmly, often reminiscing about how far Marcus had come. "You've done us proud, son," Peterson would say, clapping him on the back. "Never forget where you started." Marcus also stayed close to Captain Daniels, the man who had believed in him when few others did. The two remained lifelong friends, often meeting for coffee or taking long walks together. Daniels loved hearing updates about Marcus's latest achievements, though he always reminded him to stay humble. Success doesn't change who you are, Daniels would say. It just gives you a bigger platform to do good. One of Marcus's proudest moments came when he was asked to return to the very camp that had once dismissed him. This time, however, he arrived not as a rejected cadet, but as a guest speaker invited to inspire the next generation of recruits. Standing on the same field where he had faced rejection, Marcus felt a mix of emotions, anger, pride, and gratitude, all swirling. Together, as he addressed the assembled cadets, his voice steady and strong, he shared lessons he had learned along the way. Failure is part of the process, Marcus told them. Everyone falls at some point. What matters isn't how many times you fall, it's how many times you get back up. Don't let setbacks define you. Use them as fuel to push harder, to aim higher. And remember this, your worth isn't determined by what other people think of you. It's determined by what you believe about yourself. The cadets listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. Many approached Marcus afterward, asking for advice or simply thanking him for his words. Among them was a young black recruit named Jamal, who reminded Marcus of his younger self. After the session, Jamal lingered behind, looking nervous but determined. "Sir," he began hesitantly, I want to be like you someday, but I'm scared I won't make it." Marcus smiled, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Jamal, listen to me. Fear is natural. It means you care, but don't let it stop you. You're stronger than you think. Trust in your abilities, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. There's a whole community of people rooting for you, whether you see them or not." As the years went by, Marcus continued to break barriers and set new standards. He participated in international missions, earning accolades for his bravery and tactical expertise. At home, he advocated for policies aimed at increasing access to aviation programs for marginalized communities. His advocacy led to partnerships between the military and local schools, providing scholarships and mentorship opportunities for aspiring pilots. Eventually, Marcus reached a milestone he had once thought impossible, commanding his own squadron. On the day of his promotion ceremony, surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought about the sacrifices his parents had made, the mentors who had guided him, and the countless hours he had spent studying and training. Most of all, he thought about the little boy who had once lain in the grass, staring up at the sky and dreaming of flight. In his acceptance speech, Marcus spoke directly to that boy, and to anyone else who dared to dream big. "Life will test you," he said. "It will throw challenges your way that seem insurmountable. But if you hold on to your vision and refuse to give up, you'll find a way to rise above. Remember, the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning." As commander, Marcus prioritized teamwork and innovation, fostering an environment where creativity thrived. Under his leadership, the squadron achieved record-breaking performance metrics, earning recognition from top military officials. Yet, Marcus remained approachable, always willing to lend an ear or offer guidance. To his team, he was more than a leader. He was a friend, a role model, and a source of inspiration. Even in retirement, Marcus's legacy endured. He wrote a memoir detailing his experiences, hoping to motivate future generations to chase their dreams despite adversity. The book became a bestseller, sparking discussions about perseverance, equality, and the power of belief. Schools adopted it into their curricula, using Marcus's story as a teaching tool to instill values of grit and resilience. Today, whenever Marcus looks up at the sky, he feels a deep sense of fulfillment. Those majestic clouds and endless horizons represent not only his personal triumphs but also the countless lives he has touched along the way. He knows that while his journey may have been extraordinary, the principles that guided him, hard work, faith, and determination, are universal. They belong to anyone willing to embrace them. And so Marcus Johnson continues to soar, not just in the physical sense, but in the hearts and minds of those he has inspired. His story serves as a reminder that no matter where you start or what challenges you face, the sky truly is limitless. All you need is the courage to reach for it.